Hello everyone, I'm Cosmic, and today we're going to be taking a look at the PC version of Warhammer Quest, which was developed by Rodeo Games. Now, if you've never heard of Warhammer Quest before, it's actually not new. It's a top-down turn-based RPG that was actually released a couple of years ago, back in 2013, on mobile devices. Which means, yes, it's a port of a 2-year-old mobile game, which is the video game adaptation of the 1995 board game set in Games Workshop's Warhammer Fantasy Universe. Now, before we even get into the mechanics of the game, I want to express my utter annoyance at the pricing of the title. As is common these days with mobile ports, the game is more expensive on Steam than it is on mobile devices. In fact, it's a lot more expensive on Steam. Warhammer Quest is $5 on mobile, but $15 on Steam. Now this is a crazy price jump for the exact same game. Not only this, but they have carried over the in-game purchases from the mobile version, which personally I think they should have included free of charge for all the content, included in the full price of the actual game, considering you're charging an extra $10 just for the ability to play it on Steam. But you can buy the game with all the optional content in the deluxe edition for $30. But seriously, I do not need to be the one to tell you that this game is nowhere near worth $30, do I? Oh, and did I mention that you can buy gold in the game for ridiculous prices? Oh yes, that's in there too. Now, I've yet to encounter a point in the game where I could not progress without the purchasing of gold. However, the gold that drops organically in the game seems to be very low, not to mention the various reviews of the mobile version that claimed that the purchasing of gold was at some point required to progress. The pricing annoys me further still when no real effort has been put in to optimise the game for the PC market. You control everything with the mouse, which renders the keyboard useless, which becomes particularly annoying when you want to scroll the map with the WASD keys, but you can't and you have to click and drag everything everywhere. The developers haven't even bothered with placing in higher resolution textures for any part of the game, nor even upgraded the movie resolutions, which makes the small CGI movies when entering a town look worse than awful. The premise of the game is very simple. Take your group of adventurers through the dungeons of the Warhammer world in search of loot and glory. The standard edition of the game comes with 4 playable characters from a roster of 11. Now, the other characters are available to purchase in game because, of course they are. This all being said, the actual game mechanics are faithfully representative of the source material. Each dungeon you visit works from a grid system. By selecting your characters one by one, you can see the available movement options. You will only be able to see rooms that you are either in or have been in. Everything else will be shrouded in darkness until you step foot in it. This fog of war play means that you'll never know what enemies are waiting in the next room. It could be rats, or it could be a giant blood-hungry beast. While moving through the hallways from room to room, you'll occasionally get attacked by enemies that will spawn around you, which is fun towards the start, but when you're running low on health and out of potions, it becomes both frustrating and worrying. Combat revolves around basic attacks, inventory items, spells and abilities. Attacking a target requires a simple click, as does using items and spells once you've selected them from the bottom menus on the HUD. Everything has a hit chance or some kind of roll involved. For an example would be like a healing spell, which a roll occurs to determine how much or little the spell actually heals your characters. One of the most famous combat mechanics from the original board game was Death Blow, in which once a character killed an enemy with one hit, they could continue to carry out that attack on any other enemies that are adjacent to that enemy. In this game, the mechanic means that should your marauder, for example, be surrounded by enemies, you essentially have a chance to kill them all from one attack, potentially. This mechanic has saved me many times in tight spaces and is a very fun mechanic to use when you're facing down quite a lot of enemies. While the combat mechanics in essence are fairly solid, the hit chance can cause you to have a run of bad luck at inconvenient times. It can make the combat feel unfair, punishing, or outright brutal when you need the hits to swing your way in an important fight. Once a character dies in battle, you can use that character again once you complete the dungeon, which on one hand is okay, but in my opinion, a permadeath state for characters would have been much more fun and meaningful. Mages and units that require things like mana or willpower for abilities will regenerate amount of the resource at the start of each turn. When you're not in a dungeon, there's the world map and town screens. World map travel consists of travelling from town to town, eventually visiting all the towns in all 3 regions. To travel to an unvisited town, you must first complete the dungeon on the way. After doing this, you can then move from that town to a previous town freely. Once in a town, you have a few options available to you. First, if any of your warriors have gained enough experience to level up, then you can go to the training grounds to level them up, which does require gold to do so. Clearly, it's a mechanic for draining your gold to get you to buy some more. Each town also has a market where you can go and buy equipment and potions, as well as sell your unwanted items. Usually markets will have a few unique items in there that are specific to that town or relate to the town's quest in name only usually. The Adventurers Guild is where you can see all the characters that you are able to use, including the ones that are part of the DLC. In towns, temples can be used to pay gold at, where you can have one of your warriors pray for the chance to receive a unique buff that can be used in the next dungeon. Random events involving your warriors will also take place in towns that can end up having various effects like buffs and debuffs for the next dungeon. My witch hunter, for example, decided to get very drunk and ended up having a debuff for the entirety of the next dungeon. Finally, towns each have their own unique quests that have a short story attached to it. These quests are optional and do incur some difficult dungeons, but there's also a chance to get some great loot too. These quests are presented in text form and are relatively well written with some interesting characters and humour stuffed in there. A big element I feel is missing from the game is multiplayer. Having multiplayer in the game would have done wonders for the replayability. It's a perfect genre for the multiplayer, and Warhammer Quest itself, I mean come on, the source material is a board game for goodness sake. Multiplayer should have been a given for Warhammer Quest, and yet sadly we have none. The game overall is pretty solid and it is pretty fun, yet I personally cannot recommend it. There is no reason why you would buy a mobile game from 2013 at an inflated price just to have it on Steam. The fact that the game is riddled with microtransactions, plus no real effort has been made in both controls and aesthetics for the transition to PC, leaves me thinking that it was just essentially an easy cash grab. Even if you're a big Warhammer fan or a fan of turn-based games and you're dead set on playing this game, there is no reason not to play it on your mobile device, especially considering the price difference. Thanks for watching everyone. Please do subscribe if you enjoyed the video. If you enjoy my work overall, please head over to my Patreon and support me there, and follow me on Twitter, and I'll see you next time.